And we're live. G'day everyone, Mike Jibber here, and you are listening to My Creative Journey, Season 2, Episode number 12. In this week's episode, I'm speaking to a friend of mine and an amazing creator online, Ben Hargreaves, or at Life Through Optics, if you guys have been following him over on Instagram or TikTok. He's a automotive photographer, a car photographer, who has recently ended his 9-to-5 job and has gone full-time into content creation and creating images and content for himself and for other brands as well, and is educating other people on how they can do the exact same thing. And hearing Ben's story in today's episode was incredible. I've spoken to Ben a few times before, but he dives into a lot of depth on how he set himself up to, get out of the 9-to-5. He'd been working a job that he didn't really like, had ended up in a position, in his early 30s where he thought, I'm not really loving what I'm doing with my life, and had just taken all the steps to get there, gone through university, had fallen into a job, was working in a really good job. It's something that he enjoyed doing, but, gotten to a point where he wanted change and wanted to see himself pivot into something else. But as we all know, we all go through that of feeling like, well, wouldn't it be nice to do something else? But how do you work up the courage? How do you get yourself there? How do you financially prepare yourself, to take a leap? And what Ben did over the course of 18 months to get himself out of a full-time job into full-time content creation is incredible. So hopefully you guys, gain a lot from this episode. I know that I was super inspired hearing Ben's journey and hearing all the things that he was able to do and what he was able to create over that course of time and build his Instagram following up to well over 700,000 followers on Instagram now. It's just been an amazing journey for Ben, and he's such an inspirational guy. I do also want to say that we discuss a lot of strategies, a lot of techniques about how you can work really hard and build yourself up and build a personal brand and build a business that you really love to get yourself out of the 9-to-5. And what Ben was able to do over the course of 18 months is incredible. But I do want to say that that doesn't come at the expense of either your mental health or your physical health. I think we should be definitely prioritizing that, something that I don't speak about enough. And I've definitely been going through a stage recently where I've been working myself way too hard, that I've been neglecting other parts of my life. So what we talked about here with Ben was going really hard and using hours outside of your 9-to-5 to craft a better life for yourself and get yourself out of it. But what Ben really spoke about was he gave himself 5 years to do it, and he gave himself a good time horizon to make sure that he could sustainably make it work. There's no point doing all this work to burn yourself out in 6 months. You've got to give yourself enough time. And if it happens faster, that's amazing, but make sure that you're prioritizing your physical and mental health, because all of this at the end of the day is not worth it if you are too stressed and too drained to actually live your life. And I think that Ben brought that across in this episode, that, he was so lucky to have been able to make it in 18 months. But just because you've been at it for a little while doesn't mean that it's worth giving up. Maybe you've just got to stretch yourself out a little bit further and take a step back, to prioritize other things in your life. And I think that is super important. And I don't want anyone to feel like coming away from this episode that I'm just telling everyone to hustle, 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 and you'll eventually get there in 12 months and throw away every hour of your day, because that's definitely not the message we're coming across with. I think it's super inspiring to hear what Ben did, and for a lot of folks who want to get out of a job that they don't really like, I think it's nice to hear that someone was able to do it, and Ben really has forged that path for himself of going about a different niche in photography and being able to make it work, not actually working directly as a photographer most of the time. He's now heavy into his Escape Roadmap, which is his sort of program to help other people, other creatives, get out of their job that they're not really liking and find a path for themselves. And Ben is super dedicated in helping anyone that wants to do that. So hopefully through this episode, you guys are inspired and want to keep pursuing your creative careers. And I think that is super important and something to take away from this episode. But without further ado, I want to jump into Ben's episode. This is a longer one, but I wanted to leave it all in there because it's packed full of inspiration and just so much wisdom that comes through what Ben has to say, and his story really resonates with me, and I hope it can resonate with you as well. Hey Mike. Well, g'day Ben. Thank you so much for jumping on today, mate. I would be kidding myself if I didn't say that this was an interview that I've been wanting to have for such a long time. I feel like there are very few people in the space that, I feel like I can relate to on that level of just your drive and your motivation to keep turning up and doing what you're doing. You're such an inspirational person for me, and I know for a lot of other people as well. So honored to get you on the podcast today, mate.
Thank you, dude. It's awesome to be here. And I appreciate the little spiel there. It still feels like the imposter syndrome is still crippling, mate. So I can't take a compliment to save my life. So all I'll say is thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm glad that you've actually brought that up straight away. I feel like that's one of the biggest things, like, even for me and for you as well, like feeling like you've actually achieved something. We never sit back to take the time to appreciate what we've actually done. And I
No,
don't think that'll ever change. And
no.
I keep saying that to people. I just can't help it.
Yeah, and all my friends are very they're kind of like very encouraging, and they're just like, Ben, when are you gonna oh, you just hit 100,000 followers, for example, like last year. Let's celebrate, let's pop a bottle of champagne and celebrate. And I was like, nah, job's not finished. And then they were just like, oh, you've hit 500,000 and you did it like inside a year. Like, let's celebrate. And I'm like, nah, not done. So like it is that thing of, I don't know if it's potentially it comes from a place of fear, mate. I don't want to dive too much into the psychology, but the fear of stopping and then potentially taking my foot off the gas and not being able to find the groove again. So like while I'm in it, I just try and stay in it for as long as I can. So don't diagnose me. If there is a psychologist watching this, please don't diagnose me. I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to know. Okay.
I feel like for a lot of us, it's like we haven't always had it. So it's that kind of like, as you said, the fear of if you stop, how do you pick back up? And it could all be gone. So we have to really take advantage of what we got. Like we don't want to sit back and enjoy it because it may not be here tomorrow. So being happy in the now, I think, is hard because we constantly know what we need to do to keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, if you're anything like me, yeah, there is that constant list that you're just working through of things that you want to do and things that you want to achieve, and you can't help but focus on the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and then people around you in your life, because they're supportive, they want you to just take a second and take stock. Like I'm sure that's probably the same with you and your partner and just your friends in general as well. Like you've achieved a lot in a very short period of time as well. So yeah, man, crazy world we get to live in, hey?
Oh, absolutely crazy. I wouldn't change it for anything, but you do have to reflect and think about, well, what is it all for at the end of the day? Well, why do we do it? But super, you've been your growth and what you've been able to achieve in the past couple of years. I'm going to be the one to speak for you and say that it's been very impressive.
Thank you.
I would love to go back, and I know that this whole podcast for me is about speaking to people about their creative journey. I'd love for you to go back and sort of speak to where you came from, because you haven't always been that creative person or worked in that creative field, but recently made that change. Can you speak to where it is you came from and what you were doing before?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So my journey, like I've always been a creative person. I've always been a person that's like to draw, that's like to do all that sort of stuff. One of my favorite subjects at school was art. And then when I got to year 12, it was a case of like sitting down with my parents and them going, hey, what do you like to do? And then let's try and find you a job in that field. So my mum actually went away and found the career of industrial design. And I remember when I was 17, she showed me these sketches that these product designers were doing. And I saw them and I was like, yep, like I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do what they're doing. So I've been creative, and initially I did start off from a place of pursuing my passions, which is basically the route that led me to photography. But unfortunately, through the process of going through higher education and then getting into the 9 to 5 corporate career and all the games and all the stuff that comes along with being in that environment, really just wore at me. It just kept taking little chunks off me. And all of a sudden, that 17-year-old that loved to draw and wanted to be a product designer, all of a sudden turned into a 27-year-old that was like, I hate this now. Like, I finished uni and I was like, okay, these crusty lecturers that have just been teaching me and not giving me the time of day are now the reason why I don't like this career that I've chosen, because they've just completely turned me off it. But by the time I got to the end of my degree, I was very fortunate enough to land my first proper industrial design role when I was still finishing my final year of uni. So, yeah, man, it was this case of finished high school, found this career of industrial design. I didn't have a gap year. I didn't take time to explore anything else because all my friends were going to uni. That was just the done thing. That was the thing that everyone did. So I just jumped in. And then throughout my studies, my passion for what I had chosen to be my career at such a young age really started to diminish over time. And I changed a lot, as we all do. In that 8 years, I spent 8 years at uni. I did a diploma of product design first, and then a bachelor of industrial design after that. And I changed so much in that period of time. So yeah, man. Then I found myself in this corporate world. The first couple of years were good. I felt kind of reinvigorated because I felt like I'd made it. Sitting in 9 to 5 traffic in my button-up shirt and my beige pants and my tan boots with my shirt tucked in, and going like, yes, this is what society told me success looked like. I've done it. So that was good enough to tide me over for the first couple of years. But then those thoughts of, have I chosen the right path? Do I even like what I'm doing? Have I gotten into this because I enjoy it? Or am I doing this just to fill this expectation that was placed upon me? And yeah, man, as I started getting older, I kind of realized it was the latter. It was me just filling these expectations that have been put on me by just these external sources. And by that point, I was really just getting to a stage where going to work was just the last thing I wanted to do. Like, I was very fortunate to have the job I was in and working with the team I was working with and doing what I was doing. But yeah, it just sent me down this path, sent me down this spiral of just being chronically unhappy and then taking it out on people around me. So that's when I discovered kind of like something's got to change here. And 2020 COVID was the big turnaround for me. That was the big sort of moment where I stopped and was all of a sudden greeted by all these feelings again that have been under the surface for the last 5 or so years. But I'm sure, as with many of us, COVID forced us to stop, and that was the first time I'd ever stopped in my life. So I took a pause, I reflected, I decided that I didn't particularly like where my life was going. It didn't feel like it was my own. At that point, I had risen from a casual industrial designer doing a couple of days a week to, part-time and then a full-time designer. But then I moved into more of a project management role, and then also doing some lecturing as well. And then the like more of a senior industrial designer position. So I started climbing through the ranks of the organization. And as I started getting higher and higher, the people just kept getting worse and worse that I was coming in contact with, So yeah, man, 2020 was that sort of breaking point where I decided that something's got to change here. And I wasn't enjoying where I was at. I still wanted to be creative. And it was at that moment that I kind of decided that I wanted to do my own thing. Like, the idea of running my own business no longer scared me. The thought of going out, me against the world, trying to build something myself, for whatever reason, it didn't scare me. And, there's this quote that I really love, which is, the fear of staying the same outweighed the fear of change. And that's what it was for me. Like, I was more scared of staying in that job and being there for the next 30, 40, 50 years, going old and grey, retiring at 65, than I was at, hey, I'm 20, I think I was 27 when I'd kind of made that call myself to move in my own direction. And yeah, I was like, why not? Like, now's the time. But it took a couple more years of self-development before I really observed that photography was my thing. Because initially I started just any sort of entrepreneurial stuff. I just started absorbing it back in 2020, 2021. And, I discovered Gary Vaynerchuk, Alex Hormozy, like all of these prolific entrepreneurs, and they started opening my eyes to this complete different world outside of being an employee. And yeah, I started just trying stuff. So my first unsuccessful venture was to try a bit of drop shipping. I went down that route. First, it was like a bit of investing. I learned a bit about investing from YouTube and started to put some money into S&P 500 and just started building a bit of an investment portfolio. Then the next step was, okay, how can I actually generate revenue and build a business? So I decided to start a bit of a drop shipping business, but always with the approach of building a brand. Like, I wanted to build a brand. So I called it Studio Atrium, and it's still up on Instagram at Studio Atrium HQ. That's what I started to try and build, back in 2020, 2021. And it was all about what I had enjoyed about uni, which was these principles of biophilic design, bringing nature indoors to improve our mental and physical well-being and improving like our workspaces. You can see behind me, I've got plants and I've got stuff everywhere. I'm huge into tech and huge into workspaces and productivity. So it was this real sort of natural progression. I decided that I wanted to build a drop shipping brand around these principles of biophilic design, but tried it for about 6 months, had these sort of grand plans for where I wanted everything to go, started to make a little bit of money. But ultimately it wasn't the thing that lit that spark inside me and said, yep, this is the thing that I want to do. It ended up just kind of fizzling out. But very fortunately, I also started to notice that I had this very natural pull towards taking photos and shooting videos. I became the photographer of my friendship group. Anytime my friends wanted to take a photo or shoot a video, they'd be like, Ben, take a photo of us. Ben, take a photo of us doing this. Take a video of us doing that. Because I think my design background kind of gave me that eye for composition and framing and knowing what looks half decent and what doesn't. So I think that really stood me in good stead. But yeah, man, it was probably another 12 to 18 months before I even decided that I wanted to pursue photography. I was just shooting videos on my phone, and having this natural pull towards wanting to post on social media. And yeah, but I would get to really enjoy that over the Christmas and New Year holidays back in 2021. And then once again, the holidays of 2020 to 2021 and then 2021 to 2022. That's when I kind of like was really enjoying taking photos, shooting videos, and having this desire to post more on Instagram and all that sort of stuff. But when my 9 to 5 job fired back up again, I would just pack photography back into this metaphorical little box and slide it under my bed and forget about it for 12 months. But then once again, it would pop up, November, December, January. I would start to really enjoy it again when the stress and pressure of work was pulled away from me, because work closed down for the year. So yeah, man. And then in 2022, the start of 2022, I don't know why I was in this flow where, I bought my first camera, bought my Sony A6400, which is right here, still have it and never sell it. And at that time, $1,400 for that camera seemed like a hell of a lot of money to spend on something that I didn't even know that I was going to do. But yeah, man, end of 2021, bought that, went into knowledge acquisition mode, watched every single YouTube video I possibly could about photography, and tried to get out there and start to shoot as of February 2022. That's when I started the journey. So yeah, man, that's pretty much the whole spiel of basically going from this unsure 17-year-old dude wanting to do design through the corporate world and then into photography.
It's a crazy story to be able to hear it all that way through. And the one thing that I really take out of it is that you always had that in you. Like from the start, you had that design mindset. You wanted to be creative, but somewhere along the line, we get told to jam that down because you've got to go to university, you've got to get a job, do something. And then once you're there, so much harder to get out, as you said, like that fear of actual change, but also what sort of cost? What have we already invested in education? What have we invested in this job? What is that providing for how I'm able to live my sort of life? So to be able to move out of that, I think that is, a big testament to your character to be able to say, I'm not happy here. And so many people, to come to terms with that, that's a big, big thing to say.
Yeah, it was tough. It was probably a good 6 months of potentially even 12 months in 2020 where I was just felt so lost. This vision of myself that I thought I had and this vision of where I thought my life would take me was completely false. I felt like I was, wearing someone else's life. I felt like someone else's life was the life that I was living. It wasn't supposed to be for me, but it was this strange position, like you say, where I didn't know what the alternative was. So I had these feelings, but I had no idea what the alternative thing was, the alternative direction was. And I've always been this person where if I don't know something, I try and figure it out. And I always go to Google and I go to YouTube and I just start watching and reading and trying to absorb knowledge when I don't know something. And through the process of just starting my search, that's what opened up this entire world to me, this entire other world, which, to be perfectly honest, at school, we're not told about. We're not told about this world of running your own business and doing your own thing because, to be frank, school just wants to throw out little good little employees to serve the people that are running their own businesses and to serve government and to serve those high-powered individuals. So it's in their best interest to just keep churning people out that just like to follow the rules. And what I realized in my final year at uni was all a degree is, it's your ability to just show up on time to a place for years. That's basically all a degree tells an employer. Yes, you've learnt the skills, but it also shows that, hey, you got this piece of paper, which tells me as an employer that you can show up to a place on time, do the work, and complete the work. That's ultimately all a degree is to me,
It's so different when you get into the real world and understand that that's not how it is. Like, there's no one there telling you have an exam today if you don't pass, Like, you've got to do the work and turn up every single day as your own boss and spend a lot of time, and you have to be invested. Whereas, I came out of university, I have a degree. Do I have any expertise? Do I know any more than anyone else? No.
What's your degree?
I have I have a Bachelor of Science majoring in physics and maths. So interesting, but do I have any, expertise in that area? No, really, because I've never worked in it. I've never been super invested in it. And as you said, that piece of paper, that's all that says, that I've completed. So that doesn't really tell anyone anything.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It gives an indication that you can be a half decent employee because you can just turn up to a place on time, But I was going through some pretty difficult sort of personal stuff back in 2017, and this was kind of in my second last year of uni. Actually, no, it was my last year of uni, but I had to defer because of all this stuff that was going on. My whole world was sort of blown up, but I got some fantastic advice from a lecturer that really stuck with me. And he said, Ben, we like to think that what we do at university is all important. It's all encompassing. It's life, it's life or death. But then he went on to say that it's all make believe. It's all fake. None of this is real. This is a fabricated environment. And what's real is out there. What's real is your life, because I was basically deciding whether or not I should defer to go and, handle this personal situation, right? And that was his advice to me. It was like, of course, go and defer and deal with this thing. We like to think that what we do at university is important, but it's all fake. It's this fabricated environment. And I went away, the situation, resolved. And then I came back to university the next year to do my final year. And it was the easiest year I've ever had in higher education, purely because I was armed with that mindset of this is all fake. Nothing's real. Why am I stressing out so much about this? Who cares? So I had this rule with myself that if an assessment was worth 10% of my grade, then it would get 10% effort. And if it was worth 45% of my grade, then it would get 45% effort. So I was basically going in just ticking boxes and just moving through. And, I'm sure you've heard the phrase P's get degrees. Just getting a pass will get you that degree. So I would basically get, a distinction or a high distinction on those 45% assessments, which meant that I would only have to pass one other assessment and then I could fail the others and I would still pass the class. So that was my approach to my final year. And it was just so liberating. All of a sudden, the stress was gone and I just moved through the final year like it was a breeze. And, by that point, I was pretty spent on this whole industrial design world that I'd found myself in. And I just wanted to get gone, but I couldn't drop out because I'd already racked up all this debt, and I speak to so many young people all the time that are in their second last year of uni, or they're in their final year, and they're just like, I really don't enjoy what I'm studying, but I've already spent all this money and I'm in my final year, so I might as well finish it. It seems like this is a real common thread. And being a university lecturer myself for a long time and running internship programs, I saw both sides of it. I saw the student perspective myself, and then I saw the staff perspective dealing with a lot of students as well. So yeah, man, it's a very strange world, this education space, and I'm so glad that I'm free of it, and now I can hopefully help other people to make the realization that I made, a decade earlier than I made it. I decided at 29 that I wanted to make this my job. I want to help people discover that at 19, 18, 17, that, it's okay to not follow the crowd and to do your own thing.
And as you said, you can only know what you know. Like if you've never heard something done before, you can't know that that's a reality. So again, why this is so good that we're having this conversation, that hopefully if it helps one person, as you said, like that is amazing in my eyes, to be able to bring that to light, that you can do what we have been able to do. And for you as well, like breaking free of that is such a hard thing, but to know others have done it is so inspiring. What was the point for you where you got to where you finally felt that you could break free of what it was you were doing in that 9 to 5?
It was this single quote from Gary Vee that shifted my entire mindset. So he has this thing where he encourages people to live within their means, and he encourages people to go out and pursue what they love to do, because we only get one shot at this game called life. And he said that, get to a place where you'd rather make $50,000 a year doing something you love than $100,000 a year doing something you hate. And I was sitting in this 9 to 5 job, making a great salary, 6 figures a year. And I hated it. I hated the person that I had to be in that environment. I, disliked the people that were higher up on the corporate ladder. And as a person that is, regardless of whether I like the job or not, I'm going to give it 110% and try and be the best, even if I don't like it. So I am trying to climb the ladder and trying to get to those higher positions. But it was just this case of, I didn't like the person that I was. So something had to change. But it was that quote from Gary that it just gave me the permission to feel like there was another route. I didn't have to be this businessman making 6 figures, wearing suits and stuff. I could just make $50,000 a year doing what I love. And I sat down and I did the maths, mate. Like I sat down and I basically went line by line in an Excel spreadsheet exactly how much money was coming in and exactly how much money was going out. So I knew that in order to live my current life with everything that we've got, the rent, the car, like groceries, all that sort of stuff, I only needed 47,000 Australian dollars a year to live. Everything added up. And sitting there, once I heard this quote, and then sitting there and actually doing my finances and realizing, wow, I only need 47,000 and I can live comfortably, this exact lifestyle that I'm living right now. So then it became a question of, okay, how can I earn $50,000 a year doing photography instead, and doing social media instead, and making content? So that was like such a liberating feeling, just knowing line by line where I was at.
It's crazy once you actually put it down on, like, so many people haven't put those things down on a spreadsheet. Just work it out to how much because you don't need as much, and you can get rid of as well all that stress. Like you don't need as much as you've got, and you can get rid of this other thing that you're not enjoying. Like what a feeling that is to come to.
Exactly. So yeah, man, that was probably at the start of 2022, before I decided to go 100% into photography. I sat down and did that, and that's something that I recommend all of the people that I work with, my students. I recommend everyone to do that. That's step number 1 in this like curriculum that I've designed to help people do the same thing that I've done. That is step number 1, is just sit down and work out what your financial position is, because just knowing that, it makes you feel so much more comfortable. Or for some people, it can be more uncomfortable, because you figure out that you're actually more of a slave to your salary than you thought you were. But then it's about, okay, how can I just take things out of that? How can I live within my means? How can I minimize costs? Can I shop at a cheaper grocery store? to save a little bit more money? Can we not take that holiday to this place? Can I not spend the money on this thing? Um, but that was my priority. It was to make $50,000 a year doing something I love instead of $100,000 a year doing something I hate. So yeah, man, that was the key.
How much of that $100,000 is being spent on things to make you happier to continue to do those things? That's we're on this hamster wheel that we only go on the holiday to escape from something that we hate. But the only reason we can go on the holiday is because we have the job that we hate. It's it's just a perpetual, and you don't realize that once you get out of that, that there is something beyond that. You don't need as much to survive and be happy.
Yeah, I think if people were to just sit down and do that activity with themselves, they would figure out to lead a happy and enjoyable life. You need a lot less than you think you do. Especially like we don't have any kids. Like I've got very little debt. My fiance's got like no debt. I mean, we've still got both a little bit of uni debt, but that's been paid down. So like there's not much hanging over us. So I know for some people they're in a lot more debt. There's a lot more stress, pressure. They've got kids. They've got a house, a mortgage. So that's where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. But we've all got the same 24 hours in a day as well. And that's what I realized is you do have the ability to build on the side while still maintaining the life in that salaried position. So that was the next step for me, man, was just using every single other waking hour to plan my escape and to build something on the side that would allow me to escape this 9 to 5. So I just kept working. I could do my job on autopilot because I'd been doing it for so long. I was so comfortable in that role. I just visited the team, last week, and I walked into the office. It still feels like home, which is strange because it's this place that, the organization as a whole I didn't enjoy, but boy, were my team good. Boy, is my team awesome. And like that office is full of so many good memories. So yeah, man, I'm sure there's lots of people out there in a similar situation to me where you have a job that covers all bases. You can do it on autopilot. And then it's about, hey, instead of getting home and watching 3 or 4 episodes of your show on Netflix with your partner, you go, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to my desk. I'm going to fire up the laptop and I'm going to make my escape now because I'm sick of this. And that's all I did.
How long for you between that point of like, I'm going to go heavy into researching what it is I can do to then going, no, let's just go action mode and go all in?
So the research component was probably, I would say, a year and a half, 2 years before I decided that photography was the thing. Like photography was the thing that lit that spark inside me, lit my soul on fire, and it's all I wanted to do with my time. That's when I kind of realized it. And then from the moment of discovering that to leaving my 9 to 5 job, it was 1 year and 7 months because I have never been more focused and been more in the zone in my entire life than in that 1 year and 7 months. Like I was locked in. There was no distractions. It was just pure, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was pure pain every day. But every single day I went to the 9 to 5 job and I was reminded of what I was trying my very best to run away from and escape from. And there's some power in that. There's some power in that reminder that you find this gear of desperation. And that's really what I found. I was desperate to get out of my 9 to 5. And I've always said this, even in my, uni path and all that sort of stuff, like desperation is sometimes a good thing because you've probably heard this saying, pressure makes diamonds, So I had this desperation, I had this focus, but I also had this sustainability as well. Like I had this aggressive patience. I gave myself 5 years initially. So at the start of 2022 in February, I said, okay, I'm going to send it every single day for the next 5 years and expect nothing. No money, no followers, no clients, no improvement to my skill set, nothing. I'm just going to show up every single day for 5 years and nothing's going to happen. That was my mindset. And that was another key for me, was as soon as I resigned myself to that fate of giving myself 5 years, all of a sudden it gave me this gear of sustainability to go, this is going to take time, and I'm just going to show up every single day. And then I was very fortunate because it all paid off much, much faster than that. But I do feel like if I hadn't have come to that mental shift that it was going to take time, then potentially I would have been more impatient. I would have been more rash. I would have made some poor decisions, and things might not have gone as they did. So yeah, man, it's been wild sitting here reflecting on this, because I really don't reflect on it. I don't reflect on it often.
As we said at the start, we don't give ourselves, enough time to really talk about it. But I think that's, so important to reflect on the good things rather than just the bad. Like you had gotten to that point where you were just reflecting at the start and being like, well, I'm not happy here. But now it's like you're reflecting and saying, wow, have a look at what I've been able to do in such a short period of time. I think that has to be said as well. Like someone that's so dedicated to get there. One of my favorite quotes is, you overestimate what you can achieve in a day and underestimate what you can achieve in a year. For so many people, just they think it has to happen overnight. If I can't achieve it by tomorrow, well, then what's the point? But it's those small things adding up day in, day out. You would be surprised that you planned for going for 5 years. The fact that it only took you 18 months, like, wow, like you would have never had that in your mindset.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was just this case of, let me set some pretty outrageous goals, and that was courtesy of our good friend Tom Noski. Going through his program, Time to Build, and just giving me those guide rails, and also, a big part of what he taught me was really just finding this gear of ultimate sustainability. And I had this focus of I'm just going to do what I can do every single day. If I can give 10%, I'm going to give 10%. If I can give 50%, I'll give 50%. And it was a case of like, on my worst day, what can I still do to just move the needle forward? When I had those really big, tiring, days that just never seemed to end, which definitely did happen in the 9 to 5 corporate job that I was in. But I still managed to get home, get myself up to my desk where I'm sitting right now, and do the work. And you've probably heard me say this as well, but one phrase that helped me through all of that was, this is when it counts. Like I would come home after a big day at work, I would go down, I'd be sitting on the couch just like flat out. And I was like, you know what, I'm not going to post today. Like I've been grinding it out every day for 6 months. Nothing's working, because for the first 11 months, I went from 100 followers to 500, and I was posting every day. Like I saw no progress, 100 to 500. So that was difficult, but I was showing up because I loved it. And I was showing up because I had this vision for my life and where I wanted to go. And I had these goals as well. So the phrase, this is when it counts, would just be something that would echo in my head when I was sitting on the couch. This is when it counts, mate. This is when it matters. Right here, right now. This is why you're going to win and other people won't, because you're willing to do this. And I also had a little folder of saved motivational videos on my phone called Reminders. And I would scroll through and I would watch like 10 or 15 of these videos back to back. And that was enough to just get me off the couch and get me up to my desk to work on it. But yeah, man, there were some really tough days where, we're talking 5 a.m., 6 a.m., after I posted, and then going to sleep and then waking up at 7:30 to go to work the next day on an hour and a half sleep. And that happened a few times. But it was just this case of like, I was just so focused and so driven towards what I wanted to do that there was no other option. Failure was not an option. Not giving it 100%, not showing up on any given day was not an option. And I had this like break glass in case of emergency sort of stash of Red Bulls, sugar-free Red Bulls in my pantry. So on those days where it was like 2 a.m. and I was falling asleep at my desk right here, trying to edit my videos, I would like pop one of those Red Bulls at 2 a.m. and it would give me 1 hour to be able to get my work done before the effects wore off. So then it was just this furious hour of focus from like 2 to 3 and then I would like just fall into bed and then do it again the next day. So yeah, man, it was just going into battle every single day against myself and trying to win, you know?
It's a hard one to win. I feel like getting over that sort of mental hurdle can be tough, especially, in the society that we're in, where I think that is kind of frowned upon a little bit because it's so far outside the norm of what you do. Like after hours, like working outside of 9 to 5 is so frowned upon, I feel like, within most people I talk to. But when you're in that position, like you were, like those are the hours that you've got. Like you're like stuck in the 9 to 5. You're the only other hours that are yours that you can use are outside of that. I wanted to ask, how was your surroundings, other people who you're with, your fiance, your family, what were they like in that stage? Because I'm sure that there was a lot of things that you had to overcome with that as well. Like that being up to those hours in the morning, that's not really something that most people are used to being around.
Yeah, they were initially very shocked. My parents, my grandparents, siblings, and then especially my fiance, when I finally decided to vocalize and verbalize that I wasn't happy with this life that I built, they were like, "Why? What's wrong with you, bro? Why do you feel like this?" And I was like, "I don't know why, but you know what? I like photography, so I'm going to do that. Like, I want to be a photographer. I want to be a full-time photographer and content creator." And my grandparents couldn't understand it. They were like, "But you work at a very prestigious university in an ongoing position, earning fantastic money. Like, what is wrong with you?" You know, my parents, they're always the case. Like, I was raised in a household where, my parents don't care what we do as long as we are just the best. As long as you try your best and you give it your all, that's all that matters. So they were a little bit more like, they were still shocked, but also at the same time, they were like, "All right, mate, you know the rules. If you're going to do this, you got to be the best." And I was like, "All right." And then, yeah, my fiance, it took quite a while for her to sort of like come around to it, just because the person that she knew was all of a sudden, I mean, dying is dramatic, but I had to destroy this past version of myself to allow this new version of myself to grow, and that was a little bit of a shock for her. For me, it happened. I live with myself every single day. And she, she lives with me, lives with me, and puts up with me every single day as well. But because I'm the one that's in my own head, the change is less dramatic. But for her, it was a lot more dramatic. So probably every few months, she would come to me and be like, "Look, like I'm not seeing you. We're not doing anything. Like we're not hanging out. Blah blah blah." And I just relied on her support and her understanding during this time. But every few months, it would kind of like get to a point where it bubbled up, and then we just had to have a really open, transparent conversation with one another where I just let her know that I just have to do this. Like this is not going to be forever, and I'm going to work my ass off to make sure that we get to a place where I don't have to do what I'm doing right now. But for right now, this is all I know. This is the only way that I know how to get out of the situation that I'm in. So I need you to just be patient, and I need you to try and be as supportive as you can, and just talk to me. Just be open with me with how you're feeling. And there were days where it was like ebb and flow. We could spend time together. There was, we could do stuff. I could get ahead on content, so then we could go away for a weekend or something, which we did do. But yeah, man, it was a big shock for everyone, because it was all of a sudden like I flicked this switch, and then this previous version of myself just was destroyed.
I know that feeling. I feel like I hang out with people often who I either went to school with or went to uni with, and it's very different. I'm like, how were we ever connected? Because you do have to give a part of yourself away to become, and for you, it's not obvious because you've always had that in your head. There's always been that thing where you're like, I just slowly flicking that switch over time. But for other people, when they haven't seen you or when they have gotten to know you as someone else, and you've got to give that away. But I'm so glad that you were, able to have people around you that were supportive, but also the fact that you're honest that it is going to be hard. Like this is huge what I'm trying to do here. It's not going to be easy, but if you come along the process with me, I'm 100% going to give it my all. And that quote of like, the only way that we fail is if we quit, is so massive. Like, you just got to keep going. You just keep iterating and keep trying things until something works. And you are someone that's done that and kept going, kept showing up every day. I love that you shared the quote that this is when it counts, because as soon as I heard that from you, I was like, yep, I need to get that plastered everywhere, because so important, because you get that in your head. You're like, why do I do this? Oh, I can just take today off. Oh, I don't need to do this. I don't need to work as hard as other people. I'm working too hard, and you surround yourself with certain types of people, but reminding yourself, why it is that you do what you're doing, why are you doing this? And you definitely had a strong reminder when you're still working in that job as well, being like, every day I'm turning up here just as a reminder to say, this is what I want to get rid of.
Yeah, this is where I'm trying to get out of. Absolutely. So yeah, the process was that this is when it counts, and just saying those words over and over again in my head, saying that whole spiel of this is when it matters, right here, right now. But like, it's burned into my brain. But then I would also go through my goals, and the goals that I set for myself were absolutely outrageous. I've still got them on my phone. Like, I wrote them when I had 1,500 followers on Instagram, and I've been posting for maybe, I think, 10 months by that point, 11 months, or potentially even 12. I wrote them down, and the first top line was, I want to hit 500,000 followers in the next 12 months. And I had 1,500 at the time. And I was like, just think of the most obscenely outrageous things and just write them down. And that was something that came from Tom, and I'm sure you've done the same as well. And then the other one was, I wanted to hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, which we did. I wanted to make 120,000 Aussie dollars in a year. What else? What else was down on that list? And I wanted to quit the 9 to 5. So those were the goals that I reminded myself of every year. But the most important thing with goals is the plan that you have to be able to execute on those. So, something we learned from Tom was, unreasonable goals require unreasonable action. So if you set those unreasonable goals, you have to be prepared to act in an unreasonable way for an extended period of time. And that's what I had to do. And one of those things was posting 730 times in the next year, which is twice a day, which I managed to do. And then releasing digital product offers and growing my freelance services and all of that sort of stuff, and executing on those things, executing on the plan, then allowed the top line goals to be achievable. Because posting those 730 pieces of content in a year, it's just 730 ways of reaching out to the world, letting them know you're there, and just being open for opportunities and open for quote unquote luck. Preparation meeting opportunity, I like to say, because luck is just not a thing. Good luck can very easily turn into bad luck if you're not in a position to capitalize on the opportunity. So yeah, just working through the plan and putting yourself in the best possible position to capitalize on the inevitable upswings and the inevitable luck. And that's what happened to me, but I had to do the work to put myself in that position.
And I think just like focusing on what is in your control as well. And I know that you speak about that so often, is like, you don't have control of how people perceive your art, how people perceive what it is that you do, but you have control on how you are able to turn up every single day. That's one of the biggest things that you can give someone, is like, focus on that and other things will come.
Yeah. There's two things you can focus on, which is just your input to the business. How much can you do something? And you can imagine, if I post twice a day, every single day, and I'm going up against someone, even though I'm not, like, let's just say hypothetically there's competition in this industry, which I don't believe there is, because people buy people. We are our own niche. Everyone can carve out a slice of the pie. But let's say I'm going up against someone who posts twice a month and I'm posting twice a day, and there are people out there that will only show up on social media with one video or two videos, or a combination of image carousels and videos, and only do that a few times a month. But I'm going up against them doing it every single day. So if they're posting that infrequently, then I can get years ahead of them, but in the same time frame. Like I can do equivalent of like 5 to 10 years of their input, I can do in a single year. And that's what I did. That's what I focused on. I was just like, I'm quite a competitive person, but I never come at it with malice. But it was just like, how can I outwork everyone in my space, everyone in the photography, social media space? How can I just come in and do more than every single other person? And that was what I focused on.
I think it's like so enjoyable as well. Like, as you said, you got to play the game. It is a game, and it is interesting because you do take like luck out of the equation when you turn up so often. There is no such thing as luck. Like it'll happen to everyone. Everyone will have the chance. But if you're not turning up there to actually take it, then you're never going to know. Like, as you said, you posted so often for so long and you didn't see the results. But if you had have stopped at that point, imagine.
Yeah. Like I just clicked over the 1,400 post mark on socials because I've been posting like my first 11 months. I built up from posting 3 times a week to then 6 times a week to then, 7 times a week to then, I just kept kind of like dialing it up on myself for that first 11 months. And then October 2022, that's when I decided to start posting twice a day, every single day. And we're nearly at that exact date that I made that decision, but 2 years in the future. And yeah, just crossing over 1,400 posts in that period of time, which is insane. And yeah, it really is just your input and also just how long you can stick at this and how far you can take it. And, my parents were very shocked at the lack of balance in my life. They were always like, what about work-life balance? And what about this? And what about that? And I said something to them, which was very, very controversial and probably for the audience as well listening, that, for me, there was no such thing as work-life balance. I wasn't looking for balance. I was looking to desperately get out of a situation that I had spent the last decade stuck in, this career path. And I told my parents, I said, hey, if you're in your 20s and 30s and maybe even 40s, if you seek work-life balance, you're a loser. That's what I said. It sounds terrible. But that's how locked in I was. Like, if you're in your 20s and in your 30s and you're seeking some sort of balance from work and life, fair enough. Each to their own. You do you. But for me, that was like my approach was like, that was my thinking. Like, if I'm looking for work-life balance, I'm a loser. I'm 29, 30, 31 now. I don't want work-life balance because now is not the time. I have the youthful energy, even though I still feel a little bit old, but like I have the ability to push myself hard and to really drive for something and strive for something. So why not? Because now's the time. Because when I'm 60, 70, yes, it's still possible to reinvent yourself. Gary Vee is always pushing this narrative of it's never too late, and I do agree with that. But you're just not able to push yourself as hard as what I just did in the last 2 years, and for me, it was like, it was now or never, it was do it now or just forever be stuck in this position and live a regretful life and be, 80, 90 or however old I can get, just sitting there as an old man full of regret. And I just didn't want that. So yeah, I think they were, I probably offended them when I said that, hey, if you look for work-life balance, you're a loser. But that's where I was at mentally. I didn't want it.
I also think like if you are offended by that, maybe you've got to ask some questions, because for me, that's one of the drivers for me is seeing people unhappy, and not to say that I enjoy it. I'm like, I never want to get there. That's not what I don't, as you said, I don't want to get to that age and think I want to take a break from it because I'm not enjoying what I do with my life. I want to enjoy my life and I don't need to take that break. Like, yes, of course, it's important to have downtime and all this, that, and the other, but I want to enjoy what it is that I do on a day-to-day. We spend so much time working, so at least make it something that you enjoy. And to see other people that have spent so long doing the same thing and they're not happy and not able to make that change, that's a massive driver. And so, yeah, it probably did offend a lot of people, I'm sure. And I'm sure a lot of people hearing that right now will be offended. But the ones who are going to take action won't be offended because they'll know, they'll know what you mean.
Yeah, and I will freely admit that, I'm now starting to build some more sustainable systems for myself now that I'm full time. But I'll freely admit that I was a little bit insane for the last 2 years. Like, I've been a little bit insane. And now I'm starting to build more sustainable systems. But that insanity and that desperation was that gear that I needed to find, where I did think, like, really strongly that if I sought work-life balance, that was just not a thing. Like, you should not be seeking that. So yeah, man, like, I had this goal. I was willing to stop at nothing to achieve it. I was willing to do it for a very long period of time, 5 years or more, to make it work. And it all just paid off. It all just paid off, which is just epic, because now, I do, there's this saying where you trade a 9 to 5 for a 24/7 when you work for yourself. And that is very much the case. But I have that flexibility to decide when I work and what I work on. And what I love about my business now and my life now is, I absolutely love what I do. It's all I want to do with my time. It's all I imagine myself doing. It's all I think about doing. But also, on those really, really hard days, those inevitable, tough, tiring days where you do not want to sometimes do the things that you need to do, the difference now is, if I put in the work and I show up and I do a 14, 16, 18-hour day, which I have done, sometimes you have these chapters, you have these ebbs and flows, these chapters like in a book that you go through, where sometimes, action is called for at that level. And yeah, it's just this thing where, like, sometimes it calls for that really high effort, that real high energy, and knowing that within myself, everything that I'm doing is for me. It's not for an employee or an employer to grow their bottom line. It's not for an organization that doesn't care about me to continue to, grow that bottom line and bring in millions more dollars every year. Everything that I do is 100% for me. And I love that. If I do an 18-hour day and I launch a digital product, and then that launch skyrockets and goes crazy, like, that's all for me, But then the flip side of that is it's also all on me. It's not on anyone else.
It's a hard one. There's a lot of pressure in that, but it is a very freeing feeling to know that, everything you do is for you. And that's why a lot of people think that they're not a very good worker, or they don't have much drive. But I wouldn't have drive either if I was working for someone else. I could never do it. Like, why would I turn up and work harder? Like, ask yourself that question.
No, I definitely, like, I had the drive when I was working for someone, because it was, that person was holding you accountable. So, like, it was that accountability factor. And I'm now somewhat missing that. Now I'm working for myself. So I have to build in deadlines. I just have to, like, set stupid deadlines for stuff and just try and hit them, So that's where those really big days come from. But I remember there was this one project I was working on, at my old 9 to 5 job. I was working with Coles, the supermarket here in Australia. We were doing an innovation project with them, an innovation sprint that ran across a couple of days. And I worked from 9 a.m. on one day and then finished at 5 a.m. the next day, because we were doing, brand new food and beverage product designs and prototyping them and doing all the packaging design, doing all the logo design, branding, all that sort of stuff. And it had to be turned around inside, like, a day, basically, because that was the service that we offered to Coles, and they paid handsomely for it. But, I worked from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. and then I had the next day off. But, it just goes to show that those big days that you might have, with your employer, if you just put that effort, that same amount of effort into your own business, then it's all for you. It can skyrocket you so far forward. So that's honestly the best feeling now that I'm running my own business, is I know that all the input I put in, it's 100% for me and for the life that I'm building and for the life that me and my fiance are building and for our futures. So it's so good.
That's amazing, mate. Honestly, so good. And I'm so happy for you that you've been able to get to that point, because it is incredible once you get there. I wanted to ask about your business, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into how it was that you were, able to earn an income from it starting out? Because I think a lot of people have that question of like, well, what's the first thing that I do? Where do I start with that?
Yeah. So in the photography space, the first and most and best way to get money is you have a camera, you're decent at taking photos, you find a client, and they pay you to use that camera and do what you do best, right? That's just the 100% best way. So I had my first freelance client when I'd been shooting for 3 months. So February, March, April, May of 2022. I managed to land my first client, which was through a friend of a friend who was a rapper, and they were doing like a studio session and they needed a photographer. And I also shot a couple of videos for them as well to just come in and document that. And that was like my first paid gig. I made 330 Aussie dollars from that. But it was proof of concept. It was like proof it was possible. It was proof that I could take this thing, this object, and this skill set that I built over a few months and get paid for it. And then over the course of the next kind of like 6 to probably 8 to 10 months, it was all just kind of freelance. I would shoot cars for people that were like for sale. So like they were selling their cars. A friend of a friend again was like selling a car, and they were like, "Hey, I need some photos, blah blah blah," and I made like $570 for that shoot. So it was just this thing of like the more I did it, the more comfortable I got dealing with clients. And obviously my 9 to 5 corporate job helped because I already dealt with clients. I already had to do quoting and invoices and how to send a professional email and how to build client relationships and engage with stakeholders and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, man, that was definitely the first probably 10 months of my journey was just focused on exchanging my time for money, freelance sort of work. But then I started to pay a little bit more attention to the social media content creation side of things and how people start to build more income streams that are less dependent on selling their time for money. And that's when I discovered Tom Noski as well, probably 6 months into my journey. And I was just kind of following all of his free content. And that gave me the courage to try and launch my first digital product. I had like 1,500 followers. Actually, no, I had 500 followers at the time. And I just put out this little wallpaper pack, which was just a collection of a few images of a red Porsche that I shot, and I got like 3 sales, like when I launched it, and it was only I think nine Australian dollars, so like 6 US or something. But once again, just like with that first paying photography client, this was proof of concept. I was like, oh, I'm onto something here, and I made that product in like half a day. Or like less than that, because I had this design background. So I did I built the store, built all the like promotional images, like did it in Illustrator and, did all the graphics and all that sort of stuff. And that was like the start of building more, I don't want to say passive, but building more income streams that are less reliant on my time. And that was such a cool experience. So I had freelance clients coming in and around my 9 to 5. And then I also started to have these other income streams. And there's a quote from Warren Buffett that you may have heard as well. But like, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. And that was something that was really in the back of my mind, because when I started photography, I was in the position of, I have to make money doing this. I love doing it, but I have to turn this into a business. That was like my priority, or one of my priorities. And then, yeah, man, so that was proof of concept. I launched a second product after that, which was a little like wall art print, which people could buy for $15. Again, a few sales of that. Kept getting a few more sales on the wallpaper pack. And then that was when, Tom Noski released Cohort 1 of his workshop. And I decided to invest in that, and learned so much more about all the social media content creation side of things, building product offers, promoting, marketing, learning about marketing and sales. As a photographer, you have to be this slashy of so many different things. You're a photographer / videographer / graphic designer / social media manager, like blah, blah, blah. We have to wear so many different hats. And yeah, boy, did Tom's course open up all these other things that I had to learn. But I was also excited and willing to put in the time to learn those things, because yes, I loved photography, but then there was this meshing of marketing and sales and business and entrepreneurship that came together. And I know for some photographers that doesn't happen. They want to just shoot photos and have people pay them, and that's totally fine. But for me, I wanted to scale the business. So basically, immediately after Tom Nossy's course, I launched my first proper low ticket impulse product, which was my preset pack that was 28 USD. And I launched that when I had 1,500 followers. And again, like immediately started getting sales, which was crazy, and started marketing it and started being like, hey, I've just launched this product. I really stand behind it. I've given it my absolute all. This is the best I can possibly make it, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I think even when I had 1,500 followers in the first few days, I think I had a day where I made like $470 in a day, US, which at that time was just absolutely wild. But again, it was like proving to myself, far out, like I can do this, and this is happening. Like I made more money selling my preset pack in a day than I did working at my 9 to 5 job. And that was like wild. But it wasn't consistent. The next day I didn't make anything. So then it was about, okay, how can I make this consistent? How can I improve my skills in this area whilst also improving my photography skills, continuing to build freelance relationships and get clients, and then also continue to pump social media content and add value to people's lives. And then, fast forward a couple of months, that's when the blow up happened on social media. That's where I went from 3,000 followers to 100,000 followers in 4 days. And, I've been posting for, I think, what was it? It was October, November, December, January, February. I've been posting twice a day for 5 months straight at that point. And then that's when it all just went crazy, crazy viral. But the great thing was I had this preset pack out. I had this wallpaper pack out, and it was just like divine timing, call it divine timing, but everything just worked out. And then as soon as I started getting all those eyeballs in, the account grew. It was more engagement on the products. It was more people wanting to invest in those products to suss out what it was. And then it just started snowballing. And before I knew it, those digital product sales coming in were, they were eclipsing what I was making at the 9 to 5 job. But again, it was like, how can I make this consistent? How can I trust this to support the life that I was building and everything like that? So, yeah, man, it was another 12 months of how long was it? February until September. So it was another good few months of just refining that business model. I also kept growing on the freelance side of things as well. I landed my first retainer client, which was a car storage facility and dealership called Benzina Stables. Absolutely love those guys. I started doing all the dealership photography for them. And it got to a point where they needed me to come on board more, and I was still working my 9 to 5. I could only do 1 day a week with them. And they were just like, look, Ben, like, what do we need to pay you so that you can quit your 9 to 5 and just come and work with us? And I was like, guys, that's so nice. Like, it's insane. But by the time I was being made that offer, the digital product side of the business was already making substantially more than that. So, yeah, I decided to step away from that kind of like formalized retainer sort of relationship and focus on just growing my own income streams. So now, as it sits, it's the digital product sales are the kind of primary revenue stream. Then it's the next one after that is my workshop. The next one after that is probably freelance work, and then YouTube ad revenue is another big one. They're probably tied in terms of revenue at the moment. Getting monetized on YouTube was always a goal from the start, because it was always about how many different income streams can I build. So like freelance work, digital products, the workshop, YouTube ad revenue, affiliate marketing, can I do any brand deals, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. But yeah, man, that's kind of where I find myself at the moment. And I've just started offering this new freelance service, which is kind of right in my wheelhouse. It's the sort of work that I want to be doing. And it's also I think maybe one of the first of its kind in this space. Like it's a profit share model. And I go to dealerships and I offer them my services to create image galleries, short form content and long form content of a specific car that they're looking to sell, and they give it to me over a weekend or over a couple of days. I take it out, drive it, shoot it, all that sort of stuff, and then they don't pay me anything. They only pay me if the car sells, and then when it does sell, then I get a certain percentage of the profit that they make on the sale of the car. It's not even purchase price of the car. It's just of the profit they bring in, I take a 5% or 10% cut. So that's been like the latest development in the business, because I want to make sure that now that I'm teaching the workshop, I want to be coming from a place of relevance and expertise. So I still want to be walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And that was my exact approach when I was lecturing at the university as well, because I was coming at it as an industry lecturer. So I would teach the class, and then I would go into work after the class and literally do the things that I was just teaching. And that's so important to me. So yeah, there's the whole breakdown.
Wow, that's crazy. I feel like, you are definitely someone who walks the walk and not just talks the talk. And it's nice to hear you speak about your different avenues you went down and different ways you were able to earn income. Like we were saying before, if you've never heard it, you don't know that it's a reality, that's something you can do. Like you making income from digital product sales. A lot of people are like, as a photographer, the only way I can make money is by taking photos for people, for having them pay me for my time. But to hear you be so successful and sustainable with making income through digital product sales is eye-opening for so many people. When was that point for you where you're like, I'm going to go, I know you were saying that you didn't want to go on a retainer and do work for Benzina Stables and that type of stuff. What was there hesitation in that, into thinking I should just go completely into digital products?
I mean, there wasn't really hesitation in making that switch, because I made a promise to myself right at the start of my photography journey that I never wanted photography to feel like the job I was leaving. Because the last time I turned my passion into a job, which was my passion for design, it left me burnt and totally like spent. So I made this promise to myself February 2022 when I started shooting. I was like, I never want this to feel like the job I'm leaving. And when I was working, even just one day a week for Benzina, shooting 3, 4, 5 cars in the space of a few hours, the same exact photos, the same exact angles. And then it wasn't a case of, how good can I make these shots? It was just a case of how quickly can I apply a real base level edit and just get them out to them in like half an hour so they can post the ads. And over the course of the 6 months that I worked with them, I kind of decided that this is not what I had in mind for my photography journey. This is not how I wanted photography to feel. And it started to be a little bit too formulaic for me. So when they did offer to go, hey, what do we need to pay you to come on full time and quit your 9 to 5, I just couldn't imagine myself doing more of that, doing more of that same stuff. So, and I was very fortunate because the digital product sales were already more than enough to be able to live like a very, very comfortable life. So it was this no-brainer. I got to approach photography in a way that I loved. I always say to people, I just want to meet cool people, shoot cool cars, and do what I love. And that's it. And anything else outside of that can just go away. Like I don't particularly, want to work with brands. Like I get hit up in emails every single day going, hey, can you make a video about our product and like advertise it? Or, hey, YouTube creator, can you make like a sponsored section in your next video? Like, I don't really want to do that, because that's the sort of stuff that I had to do at my job as well. Like not that exact stuff, but in a different sort of form. And I don't want people to have control over my time. I don't want people to dictate to me what I can and can't do and how I can and can't approach photography. So yeah, man, I kind of, that was what made me step away from that freelance. I just wasn't enjoying it. The money was great. In 6 months I made 30 grand, which was good, while just working one day a week while also doing the 9 to 5. So it was something that was scalable. It's something that was achievable. But to get to the place where I would want to be with that sort of business, I would have had to start a media company, and I would have had to have like hired other photographers, and I would have had to like get all these clients on retainer, and I would have potentially spent more time managing the photographers that were shooting for me than actually taking photos myself in order to achieve the level of success in business that I want to achieve. Whereas this other avenue, it was doing much better, and it was making money while I was asleep. It allowed me to approach the business in the way that I wanted to approach it. So it was just this no-brainer. And now with this new freelance offer that I've just cooked up, it allows me to again not relinquish too much control, because it's this profit share model. So like if the car doesn't sell, you don't pay me, sort of thing, which I love. And people will give me the cars and allow me to just do what I do best: shoot photos, shoot videos, long form, short form, give them the car back, and then use my platform and use their platform to sell the car. So yeah, I feel like there's been quite a lot of development, not only in like the core photography skills, but also in how I want to approach what I love doing as a business.
It's so creative how you can get with things in your business as well. And I think that's something people overlook. Like, it's not just the photography or the art form that's the creative elements, the how you run your business, how you market it, how you structure it, how you're offering things as well. Like, you're constantly coming up with new offerings of things that, you could sell to people that people don't even know that they need. And you're going to go out there, put yourself out there. It's a bit of a creative challenge. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, you haven't really lost anything and you're having a good time. Whereas when you do get stuck in that rut of, as you said, going in, taking photos, taking the same photos day in, day out, editing them the same way, is that what you wanted to do when you started? No, probably not. And for a lot of people, it's probably not either. And of course, you have to earn an income at some point, but making that question of which, if there is an option, which one gives me more freedom to be creative and do what I want to do?
Yeah, I also wanted to travel as well. And the issue is, if you're locked in freelance, it makes travel quite difficult unless, you're the god himself, Alex Penfold, who can just like jet set around the world and get paid all around the world because he's got those amazing connections that, truth be told, he spent 12 years building. And like, I needed to turn photography desperately into a job very quickly. So I couldn't spend 10 years just like still working the 9 to 5 and waiting for the freelance income streams to get to a place where I could be free. But yeah, I also want to travel. And with freelance, if I was to pack up shop and even move to a different city within Australia, it's almost like starting from zero again. All my network of clients disappears. Anyone that knows me disappears. All that sort of stuff. And I'm almost like starting from scratch again, or maybe not from scratch, but I have to build up the network of clients and really go back to square one and start like outreach like crazy, lead generation, just going nuts. And same if I went overseas. Whereas like, a couple of months ago, like I was in the UK and Germany and Switzerland, and these were all people that I met through social media that I just went to visit. And they're just like my mates. There was no expectation of, hey, pay me for the services, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, hey, you've got a cool car. Where do you live? I'm going to come and see you. And like, let's have some fun. So like, I went to Germany in Hamburg purely to meet one of my friends and shoot his M4 and his 992 GT3 RS. That was the only reason that I went there. And that's the life that I wanted to have when I was sitting trapped at my 9 to 5 desk. I wanted to be able to travel. I saw North Borders, Optical Wonder, Seventh Era, who, by the way, all run businesses exactly the same as me. They don't do freelance work. It's all digital product based. It's all YouTube ad revenue based. And yeah, man, that was the life that I wanted to lead. So of course, this is the route that I went down instead of the more traditional route.
And it's amazing that you've been able to be so successful with it, and just like, again, just a big testament to how hard you've worked with it and how far you've been comfortable to put yourself out there and go against what most people think is the only way that you can do things in photography. I wanted to ask just finally about your new offering, about what it is that you're working with, your own cohorts, working with Escape Roadmap. Talk us through what you're doing with that, because I think a lot of people, especially hearing your story, I'm going to be super interested about what it is that you're doing there.
Yeah, for sure. So this is really something that um, it's a massive passion of mine, teaching and also building curriculums, I guess, because when I was working at the university, my favorite thing about the job right up until I left was being able to work with students and being able to run internship programs to make them more prepared for industry, being able to have them work on real life projects, designing real life products. And then, yeah, just being able to share this methodology for innovation that we have. And the Escape Roadmap is my workshop, which is a way of me plugging back into that world that I love so much, teaching, lecturing, building these methodologies for people to follow. So I've basically turned everything I've done throughout that journey of, going from, just picking up photography as a passion to then turning it into a business. And I've worked out broken it up into this entire methodology that is this recipe that people can follow to do exactly what I've done inside 12 to 24 months. So I'm now working with students online in a live cohort capacity to basically guide them through that methodology. They join me live on Zoom, and I deliver all the sessions live. And there's big Q&As afterwards where I literally don't leave until every single question's answered. Sometimes they go for 3 hours, and I can't speak anymore after. But it's truly one of the things that I love most about the position that I'm in now is I've seen it, I've done it. I've been through uni, I've been through high school, I've been in the corporate world. I've now turned my passion for photography and content creation into a job in less than 2 years. So now it's about how can I just help people and prevent them from making the mistakes that I made and just speed up their path to just get out of places where they feel stuck and they feel trapped. So that's why it's kind of called the Escape Roadmap, because I'm giving people the roadmap that I used to get out of my 9 to 5 job and this position where I felt so stuck and didn't feel like myself. And yeah, so far I've run 2 cohorts and had 140 students through, and they also get like ongoing support, weekly calls with me, and I've got one later today. So yeah, man, it's just really nice to be back in this teaching space and being able to, instead of teaching curriculum that a university hands down to me and then I have to improve it to make it like more understandable and more relatable and more actionable, now I get to just build something from the ground up. And this is just like my baby. And this is, it works because I did it, So yeah, man, it's so good. I love it. I love it. I love photography. I love making my videos and content, but then I also love teaching people stuff too.
And just helping people, like that's the one thing that I take away from your content is you've always just gone above and beyond to help people. And it's the biggest reason I think for your success is that, you've never shied away from helping people or handing out everything that you know. Like you've been so honest in this conversation, even like that is just you, and you just give and give and give. And I would believe that you would, answer everyone's questions till early hours, in the evening, because you just care so much. And it's amazing to see that you've been able to turn that into something that you're now helping people in person in these live workshops. Already onto cohort 3, which I think is crazy as well.
Yeah. Cohort 3 is coming out later in the year, and big upgrade from cohort 1 and 2. Like cohort 1 and 2, again, it's like my whole journey. It's just proof of concept. Can I get my first freelance client? Yes. Can I sell my first digital product? Yes. Can I run a workshop? Yes. And did I enjoy it? Hell yeah. So how can I do more, and how can I make it better, and how can I help more people? And yeah, I think it's always been something that's been in me from like a young age. Like anytime I knew something that other people didn't know, I have this thing where I just can't shut up. Like I just can't not say anything. Like if I'm speaking with someone, or if I overhear a conversation and someone's struggling with something, they don't know something, and if I have an answer, I literally, before I know it, I just blurt it out in obviously the nicest way possible and just explain it and try and empower that person with this knowledge. And I don't know where that comes from. But even at uni, because like I met my fiance at uni and we'd be in class together, and the lecturer would like deliver something, and for whatever reason I would understand it and I would start doing it, and the students around me would kind of notice and be like, "Oh, what's Ben doing over there?" And they were like, "Hey, I didn't understand what the lecturer just said. Like, can you help me?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So then I'm like taking one person through it, like showing them, and then I look up and there's a crowd of like five other, six other students around, and they're all just like listening as I'm like taking them through. It was CAD class, 3D CAD, designing things in a program called SolidWorks. And then my fiance was like, "Will you just stop helping people? Like just stop it." And I was like, "I can't. I don't know."
I still get that till this day. I think it irritates my like wife still, but I just offer to help people out of nowhere and spend too much of my time helping. But but it's the enjoyment for it, and that's why you start and why we do what we do, to help people. So to stop that would seem a bit weird,
Yeah, and I think that's why we've had the success that we've had on socials as well. Is it's like what I said on a podcast the other day, where if you're a good person and you plug yourself into social media, then it's guaranteed. It's only a matter of time before things just take off. Whereas if you're a bad person, if you're coming at it from what can I gain, what can I get from people, then it's just the wrong world. Like social media is an incredibly powerful tool for connecting with one another, but also building a platform to build other people up and help people. And yeah, if you're coming at it, there's no malice in what you're doing. You're just coming at it purely wanting to leave the world in a slightly better place than when you found it. That's what I love most about being able to plug yourself into social media and build a personal brand. There's literally no downside. So as a photographer, videographer, creative of any sort, everyone should be plugging themselves into socials in some sort of way, building that network, trying to help people, trying to grow the industry. Because, I'm so unbelievably passionate about photography, about content creation, about what I do. So how could I not want to share that with as many people as I possibly can? It's like this no-brainer thing. I don't have it in me to hold things back just for my own gain and keep the industry small and not thriving. Like I want more people to come in. That's why all my content's beginner focused content, you know? It's just a no brainer. And I think it also comes from something called the abundance mindset. Like I know that no matter how many people come into our beautiful industry, there is always a big enough slice of the pie for people to carve out a $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year niche to be able to do what they love. And as you were alluding to before, there's so many different ways to go about doing the same thing. So you and I, we want to use our camera, we want to do what we love, and we want to make a great living doing it. And there's so many different ways you can go about doing that. I've chosen one route, you've chosen another route, which is more of a hybrid of our two approaches. Other people go down the full media company route, and everything in between, So there's so much space for people to just come in and join us doing what they love to do, and that's what I'm all about.
Yep. And easiest way to have success in that is to just be you. That's what I tell people all the time. Like you are the brand. Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Don't try to do what other people have already done before. Do you, be you. And that's the way to stand out in this. Like there's so much to go around. Like I don't care if people steal my style because it's never going to be me.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
That's my approach as well. Yeah, like if people steal my stuff, like fine, you can have it, but you're still just chasing me because like I'm the one that's coming up with the stuff, But as soon as you can lean into what makes you, you can tell your stories, you can show who you are, and you can lean into that. That's where true success is found, even if it's not in the social media space. The power of building a reputation. I learned this in my corporate career. I've now learned this tenfold in the social media space. Your reputation is your silent spokesperson. It precedes you everywhere you go. Guarantee there's people speaking about us right now, and that's not coming from a place of like, oh, look at me, look at me. It's just the case. Whether it's people that are about to get married that are going, hey, who should we have shoot our wedding? Like, oh, our friend got married the other day. Who was their photographer? Oh, it was Mike. Oh, let's reach out to Mike. Bang. Like guaranteed, there's probably conversations like that happening as we speak right now. And same thing for me, So just the power of focusing on those small actions that build that reputation over time in business is so key. Yeah.
Honestly, this has been an incredible conversation. I really appreciate you sharing as much as you did, and I could keep asking questions for hours, but I think we probably wrap this episode up. I will leave links to all your stuff down below if people haven't heard about your stuff before, and if they want to jump in your next cohort, definitely. I definitely encourage anyone to go and hear more from you, because you're a very inspirational person, and you do actually care, and that really comes through. So
Thank you, mate.
is there anything else that you wanted to leave the people with today before we round this episode out?
Yeah, just try and pursue what you enjoy doing, please, because we only get one shot at this game called life. So why not spend it doing something you like and throwing away these expectations that your parents might put on you, your teachers might put on you, society might put on you, and actually sitting down and deciding what you want to do with your life, because I didn't. And, I was fortunate to be able to pull myself out of that decade-long hole, but other people aren't so lucky. So if you do have the time to just sit and reflect, please do. And you might be very surprised with what you find yourself doing in a few years' time.
Yep. Well, I think with that said, it's about time for us to sit down and reflect on everything that we've done.
Sounds good.
and have a think about what it is we're moving on to next. So important to always take that time. Well, thanks so much, Ben, for joining me today, mate. Really do appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Next time I'm down your way, I'll definitely have to pull out a camera and we'll go take some photos of cars.
Dude, I would love that. Yes.
No idea how to do that, so you can educate me in that space.
Anytime. You're always welcome.
All right, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, that is the end of today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation half as much as I enjoyed having it. If you did enjoy today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you did leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. Or if you're watching over on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave us a comment down below to let us know that you did enjoy this episode. Also, feel free to share this episode on Instagram and tag me at Mike Jeffrey Photography so I can reshare them on my stories. And also message me and let me know who you would love to hear on an upcoming episode of this podcast. I've always tried my best to be able to have conversations with people who are in the creative space and people that I think would be a good fit on this podcast. And I would love your input as well. In a very privileged position at the moment where, I'm able to reach out to people and have them on my podcast and have really interesting conversations with a whole range of people in the creative space and talk about their creative journey. So if there is anyone you would love to hear from, please let me know and I will do my best to try to get them on the podcast. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge the first creatives of the land on which I am recording today, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of so-called Australia. As we tell stories of today, I just want to reflect on how First Nations people here and across the globe have guided and informed our understanding of the creative journey. But until next week, friends, have a lovely week and I will speak to you all again next Monday. Bye. Editing and post-production on this episode was done by Mossy Media, and music was created by JWPATON.